Hello and thank you for joining us for Into the Killing. At the end of last week's episode, we said that in today's episode, we were going to look at the murder of a former beauty queen. However, as we were researching the case, we realized that the case is still in the court system. In each episode, we want to tell you the most complete story we can, so we'll cover that case in the future. Instead, in this episode, we are going to cover a bizarre and disturbing cold case that was solved, but there are still many unanswered questions regarding the case. The case began on February 22, 1984. The week before, Footloose starring Kevin Bacon was released. If you turn on the radio, you'd probably hear Jump by Van Halen because it was the #1 song on the Billboard charts. 26-year-old Cindy Thompson lived in Pontiac, which is a suburb of Detroit, Michigan. She was 7.5 months pregnant. The father of the child was Cindy's boyfriend, Mark Davis. Just before 5 a.m. on February 22nd, Mark Davis went over to Thompson's house. He was shocked by what he found. He then drove 4.5 miles to a friend's home and had them call the police. The police arrived at Thompson's home and they found a gory crime scene. At the bottom of the stairs, there was dry blood and a clump of hair. In the upstairs bedroom, they found the dead body of Cindy Thompson. Her fetus was also dead. She was face down in a pool of blood on the floor. Her murder had been horrific. She had been beaten in the head and stabbed. Her organs were lying beside her body. She had a long cut on her back, running from the middle of her spine to her right side. There was a gaping hole in her back, which is how the organs were removed. The police looked around the rest of the house. They noted that the phone line had been cut. They found a bloody towel in the kitchen. There were no signs of a break-in or forced entry. The back door was unlocked. The medical examiner determined that the blunt object used in the murder was most likely a ball-peen hammer. A sharp object was used to stab, slash, and disembowel Thompson. One of the stabs severed her spinal cord. Another one lacerated her liver. The police then tried to piece together the last night of Cindy Thompson's life. She was living in a house that belonged to a couple who had children. Instead of paying rent, Thompson babysat for the couple. The man didn't like Thompson and he did not want her living in his home. On the night before Thompson's body was found, Thompson babysat their children until about 8 p.m. and then she went to the woman's workplace. The woman had received a letter from a friend and wanted to read it, so Thompson brought it to her. Thompson left the woman's workplace sometime between 8:45 and 9:15 p.m. A neighbor thought she heard Thompson pull into her driveway between 8:45 and 9 p.m. Then shortly afterward, she heard a second car pull into the driveway. A few minutes later, she heard the second car leave. A friend of Thompson tried to call her several times between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m., but the line was busy. She stopped calling around 9 p.m. without reaching Thompson. We're just going to take a step back to bring you a word from our wonderful sponsor, Feels. Do you suffer from anxiety, experience stress? Do you deal with chronic pain, or do you have problems falling asleep at least once a week? You are not alone, many of us do. Our producer and sound designer, Danelle, had problems with anxiety and falling asleep. She was looking for something natural that would help her with both issues. That's when she found Feels, which is spelled F-E-A-L-S. Feels is premium CBD that is delivered directly to your doorstep. Feels is easy to take, just put a few drops under your tongue. Danelle said that within a few minutes of taking it, she noticed a difference. She said she felt more relaxed, and then that night, she had no problems getting to sleep. Feels is great because it's not addictive and there are no hangovers. It's natural and it reduces stress, makes you calmer, and helps you get to sleep. One thing to note is that different people need different doses of CBD. That's why you should experiment with doses over a week or so. If you're new to CBD, call Feels CBD hotline and one of the representatives will be happy to help. Join the Feels community to get Feels delivered to your door every month. You'll save money on every order and you can pause or cancel at any time. Feels has us feeling our best every day and it can help you too. Become a member today by going to feels.com/listed. You'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That's feals.com/listed to become a member and to get 50% automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. Once again, that's feals.com/listed. Feel better and help support Criminally Listed by checking out feals.com/listed. The police then asked Mark Davis what he had been doing before he found the body. He said that the day before, he and his friend had started drinking early. He went home at about 6:30 p.m., ate dinner, and then played video games. Early the next morning, he decided to go to Thompson's to get some marijuana he had been storing there. At this point, he had consumed about 5 bottles of wine. When he arrived, he found the dog out in the front yard, which was unusual. He went inside and found Thompson on the floor, but it was dark. So he changed the light bulb, turned on the light, and then he saw that Thompson was clearly dead. He tried to call 911, but the phone line was dead. So he got into his car and drove 4.5 miles to a friend's home that was in a different township and had them call 911. He then drove back to the crime scene and met up with the police. Davis said that he did not kill Thompson and she was dead when he found her. Davis explained that he and Thompson had been high school sweethearts, but they broke up before they graduated. They reconnected in 1981. It turned out that while Thompson was pregnant with Davis's child and they had been dating for years, Davis was still living with his common-law wife, Carol E.G. Since the late 1970s, Davis and E.G. had been living together. Around the time of the murder, Davis was planning on moving out of the home he shared with E.G. and moving in with Thompson. E.G. was furious about the situation. The police considered E.G. to be a suspect, but they didn't have any evidence that connected her to the crime. In April 1984, just 2 months after the murder, the case was filed away as unsolved and open. Many people said that the murder investigation was inadequate. In 1992, 8 years after the murder, the case was reopened. The police considered Carol E.G. to be the prime suspect, and the new detectives investigated her. They discovered some disturbing things about E.G. For example, in late 1982, E.G. and a friend broke into Thompson's home and ripped several t-shirts. In December 1983, E.G. and a man who was never identified went over to the home that Thompson shared with her sister. E.G. physically attacked Thompson, who was 5 months pregnant. Thompson's sister said that E.G. only stopped because the man told her to stop. E.G. told Thompson to stay away from Mark Davis, and then she and the man left. E.G. supposedly told people that she planned on throwing Thompson down the stairs in the hopes that it would cause a miscarriage. Another witness saw E.G. and Thompson having an argument in the doorway of Thompson's home the day before the murder. A man was with them, and the witness thought it might have been Mark Davis. a woman who lived with E.G. in the week before the murder, heard E.G. say some interesting things. To her, it was clear that E.G. wanted Thompson dead. E.G. supposedly said something along the lines that killing Thompson would be doing Davis a favor because the baby would probably be deformed. The woman said that E.G. told her that she could stay for free if she provided an alibi. The woman also said that E.G. was looking for someone to kill Cindy, and apparently she had asked 2 men. Apparently, E.G. had even spoken to Thompson's cousin about killing her. The woman also said that E.G. went over to Thompson's home and tried to push her down the stairs in an attempt to kill the fetus. After the murder, E.G. was asked to come to the police station. The woman went with her. She told the police that on the night of the murder, E.G. had been home all night. But the woman had actually worked until 3 a.m. at McDonald's and didn't know where E.G. was most of the night. After talking to several of Carol E.G.'s friends, it was clear to the investigators that she was a woman scorned. Her romantic partner was planning on leaving her for another woman who was pregnant with his child. So she wanted Cindy Thompson dead. While the police had a motive, they did not have any physical evidence. We're going to take one more quick break to bring you a word from our amazing sponsor, Acorn TV. It's starting to feel like the warm weather is just around the corner, but as of right now, it's still a bit too cold to spend too much time outdoors. To mentally escape while I'm bundled up inside, I love getting lost in a great TV show, especially one from across the pond. Some of the funniest and most riveting TV shows I've ever seen are from the United Kingdom. They have some shocking crime dramas and sitcoms with hilarious deadpan comedy. That's why I'm obsessed with Acorn TV. Acorn TV is a streaming service that is rooted in British television. They have hours and hours of award-winning series in many different genres like mystery, comedy, drama, just to name a few. The shows are clever, well-written, and visually stunning. The series have some famous actors like Rachel McAdams and Ian Glenn from Game of Thrones. If you're like me and you love suspenseful crime dramas, then you'll love Acorn TV's original series, Mystery Road. Mystery Road takes place in the Australian outback. A detective and a local cop, who is played by Oscar nominee Judy Davis, team up to investigate the disappearance of 2 young boys. As they get deeper into the case, they uncover secrets that some of the townspeople would rather keep buried. The second season of Mystery Road just premiered, and it's a new thriller where the desert meets the ocean. Mystery Road is just one of the amazing TV series on Acorn TV. I personally recommend Code of a Killer. It's the true story about the first case to use DNA fingerprinting, which is the case we cover in our very first episode. Acorn TV is an amazing deal, especially when you compare it to other streaming services. For just $5.99 a month, you can get thousands of hours of new and refreshing content. Escape to Britain and beyond without leaving your seat. Try Acorn TV for free for 30 days by going to acorn.tv and use the promo code listed. That's ACORN.tv and use the promo code listed to get the first 30 days for free. Find something great to watch and help support Criminally Listed by checking out Acorn TV. For the first time in the investigation, the physical evidence was sent to the state's crime lab. This included fingerprints and hair that were collected from the crime scene. After the murder, E.G. started dating another man and they eventually broke up. When they broke up, she left behind a box. The box contained 3 hammers and a knife. He said that the knife was bent at the tip and he noticed that there was some blood and hair on it. He ran the knife through the dishwasher. In 1987, the man gave the knife and the hammers to the police. The knife and the hammers were also sent to the crime lab. The testing by the crime lab revealed that most of the fingerprints belonged to Mark Davis and Cindy Thompson. Other fingerprints were found, but they were not matched to anyone. The hairs that were found belonged to Thompson and some other people. But one of those people was not Carol E.G. Finally, the knife and the hammers didn't have any of Thompson's blood on them. Experts were never able to prove if they were the murder weapons. Essentially, none of the evidence placed E.G. at Thompson's house at any time. The county medical examiner reviewed the autopsy report and the autopsy photos. She noticed a large mark on the left side of Thompson's face. The original medical examiner said that the mark was post-mortem lividity. This is simply caused by blood pooling in the body. Since Thompson was lying face down after she was killed, the blood pooled in her cheek. Nevertheless, the new medical examiner had a forensic odontologist, Dr. Alan Warnick, review a photo of the wound. He said that it was a bite mark. Cindy Thompson's body was exhumed, but the body had decayed too much to reveal any new information, and it was unclear if the mark on the face was from post-mortem lividity or if it was a bite mark. Nevertheless, Dr. Warnick was convinced that was a bite mark. He compared the photo from the autopsy to the dental records of several suspects. According to Dr. Warnick, the only person who matched the bite mark was Carol E.G. The police finally felt like they had enough evidence to arrest E.G. 36-year-old Carol E.G. was taken into custody at the end of April 1993, over 9 years after the murder. Carol E.G. went to trial at the end of 1993. The prosecution's case was clear. Carol E.G. loathed Cindy Thompson for stealing her man, and she wanted her dead. On the night of the murder, E.G. got Mark Davis drunk by giving him wine. When he passed out, she took his keys and went over to Thompson's home. She let herself in, which explains why there was no forced entry or signs of a break-in. She then beat and stabbed her romantic rival. The prosecution had friends of E.G. testify. They all said that E.G. hated Thompson and she wanted her dead. Several witnesses also said she tried to hire 2 different men to kill Thompson. The woman who lived with E.G. also testified that E.G. had asked to provide her with an alibi. But there were problems with the testimony of the witnesses. Around the time of the murder, many of them were drinking heavily and doing drugs. Perhaps as a result of their drinking and drug use, they did not have accurate memories. They often said things in court that didn't match or even contradicted earlier statements they had made. Mark Davis testified, and he said he did not believe that Carol E.G. was the killer. He said that she was at home with him all night. The star witness for the prosecution was Dr. Alan Warnick. The prosecution tried to get Warnick to explain what the odds were that the teeth marks belonged to someone else. He pointed out that at the time there were about 3.5 million people living in the Detroit metropolitan area. He then asked would any of those 3.5 million people's dental marks match the bite mark found on Thompson's cheek. Warnick testified that in his expert opinion, they would not. The prosecution argued that the bite mark evidence clearly established that E.G. was the killer. How else could her bite mark get on the dead woman's face unless she killed her? The defense's case was also straightforward. E.G.'s lawyer said that some of the circumstantial evidence was accurate. But there is a difference between hating someone and wanting them dead and beating them to death with a hammer, stabbing them, and disemboweling them. All the witnesses said that before the murder, E.G. wanted Thompson dead. But after the murder was committed, no one heard E.G. admit or even hint that she committed the murder. The defense said that the police ignored other evidence that implicated other people and solely focused on E.G. Notably, they said that Mark Davis could have been the killer. He had a key to Thompson's house, and his fingerprints were found at the crime scene. Davis said he had been drinking at a friend's house, and then he went home and spent the evening with E.G. But his friend testified, and he said that he had not been drinking with Davis that day. The defense pointed out that no paternity test was performed on the baby. Perhaps Davis figured out or became suspicious that he wasn't the father and he killed Thompson. The trial lasted 15 days. On January 12, 1994, Carol E.G. was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life without the chance of parole. For over a decade, E.G.'s lawyer filed appeals. Her final appeal argued that Dr. Alan Warnick should not have testified for several reasons. The first is that, in the years after the trial, his methods and conclusions had come into question. 5 cases he had testified in had their convictions overturned after other dental experts disputed his findings. Secondly, Warnick made his conclusion based on autopsy photos. During an autopsy, if there is a bite mark on the body, it is photographed in a specific way to capture as much detail as possible. The photos that Warnick based his opinion on were not taken as if the wound was a bite mark. Instead, since the original medical examiner thought it was post-mortem lividity, the wound was photographed that way. Also, the stat that Warnick gave that out of a group of 3.5 million people, the bite mark could only belong to E.G. was utterly unfounded. In July 2005, a judge agreed with the appeal and overturned Carol E.G.'s conviction. She went to trial over 2 years later in October 2007. The second trial was very much like the first one, but there was one significant difference: there was no bite mark evidence. The bite mark evidence was the only physical evidence that linked E.G. to the murder. No fingerprints or hairs or blood connected her to the crime scene. Also, the murder weapons had never been found. There were also no witnesses who placed E.G. at the scene or heard her confess or take responsibility for the murder. The prosecutor said that Cindy Thompson's murder was an annihilation of a person. Whoever killed her most likely hated her. There was only one person who hated Cindy Thompson that much, and it was Carol E.G. The defense tried to show that there were other possible suspects, like Mark Davis. He had a key to Thompson's house, he didn't have a good alibi for the time of the murder, his fingerprints were found at the crime scene, and he acted strangely the morning the body was found. For example, why did he drive so far from the crime scene to call 911? Another possible suspect that the defense suggested was Davis's mother. A man testified that Davis's mother asked him to kill Thompson. Carol E.G.'s second trial lasted a week. Then the jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. Once again, Carol E.G. was found guilty of first-degree murder. At E.G.'s sentencing hearing, she said she wanted to apologize, but she did not commit the crime. E.G. was once again sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. At the time of this recording, 64-year-old Carol E.G. is serving her sentence. Some people do not believe that Carol E.G. is the killer. After all, no physical evidence links her to the crime scene. She has always maintained her innocence. Other people do not believe she carried out the actual murder herself. They believe she hired someone or convinced someone to commit the murder. People find this frightening because the murder was absolutely grisly. If that's the case, is the person who annihilated Cindy Thompson walking around the streets today? But this is all merely speculation. The Pontiac Police and the District Attorney's Office consider the case closed. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, our producer and sound designer is Anel Cloutier. You can follow her on Instagram. The link to her Instagram is in the description box. If you just discovered our podcast, we'd love it if you checked out our channel on YouTube, Criminally Listed. We have over 275 videos featuring some riveting and chilling true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe or follow so you don't miss any future episodes. In next week's episode, we'll examine the tragic and convoluted case of a 5-year-old boy who was murdered in New Jersey in the early 1990s. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for listening. Take care and stay safe.